Earlier in May of this year, Randy Weaver's family confirmed that he had passed away. He was the main figure of a 2-week standoff with the FBI and US Marshals in 1992. Agents descended on his cabin on a mountaintop in Ruby Ridge, Idaho, after he was accused of selling illegal firearms to an informant. Weaver said that he had been given the wrong date to appear for court, and everything descended into the standoff that would end up claiming the lives of his son Sammy Weaver, his wife Vicky Weaver, as well as Deputy William Francis Deegan. There is a massive rabbit hole that you can go down with this story. What can we learn from this tragedy as preppers in 2022 so that we can better secure the place we call home from any aggressor that is bringing the fight? Overwhelming firepower can even the odds, but there's a limit. Numbers are important for defense. Law enforcement groups had no interest in closing with and destroying. They surely could have had every barrel firing on that cabin, but that was law enforcement, surrounded by cameras and ultimately bound to the rules and limitations we as Americans expect. We are talking about SHTF lessons. Unless everyone in that cabin were armed with crew-served weapons and were as competent to use them as professional soldiers, the firepower advantage ultimately resides with numbers. You can have the most tricked out weapon on the block, but if it's you and your wife defending the castle, I have bad news for you. Randy Weaver lost his son and the family dog in the first skirmish. His friend returned fire and claimed the life of a deputy, but numbers-wise, he lost one of the only people who could wield firepower, while the assaulting force had a near infinite number of replacements ready to fill the gap. So you can build your wonder gun and stockpile 30,000 rounds of ammunition, but if you have no one else to help you in the event of an attack, like isolated frontiersmen of old, your scalp is going to end up on a stick. Supplies will be limited to the space you own. I don't know how many people would be content living in a bunker that's emulating a full breakdown of civilization with 5-gallon buckets and ammo cans everywhere taking up living space. Sure, you can get creative and build storage solutions, but if you have a limited budget, having your supplies pile up haphazardly around the house doesn't quite make your living quarters feel like you're living the life of a confident and prepared individual, rather a scared one with no thought to their process. Weigh out what you need, stow it appropriately, and if you keep your goods rotating, you should be good. If you could potentially be facing a crisis that lasts beyond a 6-month point, you should invest in ways of food generation and water purification, and focus less on things that require a robust supply chain to purchase. You can't buy your way out of some problems. Eventually, you're going to have to grow your own food and purify your own water. Think about the supplies you have on hand and make sure you're storing enough of the essentials for everyone in your family. Any overflow could be stored outside if you acknowledge that you could potentially be denied access to those supplies, so keep the most essential items inside. Don't forget that the knowledge to grow or capture food becomes increasingly important the further you are from any kind of supply chain that may form. Medical training is also very critical. All participants can become casualties. Keep medical supplies handy. Prepare a separate space for any KIA. You can buy tourniquets and combat kits to your heart's content. That's your prerogative to stock up on the medical supplies you think are critical. However, you should never neglect training. Just like purchasing a firearm, medical skills are a practical application skill that is perishable. Yahoos like to buy a gun and then think that if they had to use it, it would be as easy as they saw on The Walking Dead. Nothing but headshots in the first 30 rounds. If we look at reality, it gets very hard to maintain accurate and fast shooting as more and more stress is applied. The same goes with medical training. When you're watching a video on YouTube in your underwear, you might think, yes, I absolutely can do that and put it on correctly. However, stress and stimulus do funny things to people. People treating casualties right on the X. People applying 3 ineffective tourniquets. People leaving behind sensitive equipment or just going into a frozen state of shock. It's all happened to people we like to think of as professionals. You absolutely need to take the steps to practice this in real life and seek training by people who are certified. Morale is important too. Going back to the cabin in the woods being assaulted by the Golden Horde. God forbid in that situation a loved one is killed and you can't bury them right away. You must find a way to keep their body, their death, from demoralizing the survivors.
Unfortunately, Vicky is dead.
So of course this isn't an exhaustive list of different arcs of what ifs. If we were to do that, I could probably go on forever. it doesn't change the fact that ultimately everything that happened here was a tragedy. We should take a look at the lessons that we can learn, adjust our preps as necessary, and never neglect that all-important word community, both how we project to it as well as how we build it. Because I'd like to be surrounded by a community in a true emergency. We've seen people come together in instances like 9/11 and the Boston bombing. We see the same type of unity when small-town America comes together after a devastating tornado. Random civilians digging through rubble, attempting to reach voices crying out for help after the Northridge earthquake, will be able to survive and triumph over any adversary or challenge as long as we have a community that can come together with enough numbers and cooperation. I hope this helps you reevaluate what you work on. If you have all the physical preps that you can get, but now you need to work on yourself or building that community, you know what to do. Until the next video, be good, stay safe, and have a good one.